You're cruising down the highway, the sun is shining, you've got your favorite playlist going, the weekend is right ahead of you, and then you hear it. Just a little ding.
Oh, yeah. The worst sound in the world.
Right. You glance down at the dashboard, and there it is, glowing amber, the check engine light. And for most people, I mean, that tiny little illuminated engine icon feels like a financial death
It really
sentence.
does. It completely ruins the mood.
Exactly. Your mind immediately jumps to the absolute worst case scenario. You start calculating how much room you have on your credit card, wondering how you're going to commute to work on Monday. It's just dread.
Well, it's the ultimate mood killer because it feels so vague,
Yeah.
and ominous. The car is suddenly acting like this black box. You know something is wrong, but you have zero visibility into what that something actually is.
Which brings us to today. Welcome to the deep dive. We've custom tailored this exploration specifically for you, the listener, because we know you want to be well informed, but without drowning in all that technical jargon.
Yeah. Right. Nobody wants to read a textbook right now.
Exactly. So we pulled a stack of diagnostic masterclasses from the mechanics over at 1A Auto. And our mission today is, I think, highly empowering. We're going to teach you how to decode the secret language of your car.
I love that framing. The secret language.
Yeah, we want to help you translate those weird dashboard codes, the mysterious drafts in the cabin, and those terrifying clunks under the floorboards into actionable knowledge so you don't feel overwhelmed when your car acts up.
Because diagnosing a vehicle is ultimately just an exercise in critical thinking.
Mm.
I mean, it is not magic. It's just gathering sensory clues to solve a mechanical puzzle.
Just cause and effect.
Exactly. You are simply looking for cause and effect. And once you understand the basic logic of how these automotive systems work, that ominous check engine light becomes, well, a lot less terrifying. It transforms from a threat into, like, a helpful breadcrumb trail.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with what I like to call the invisible gremlins.
The invisible drum.
Yeah, because these are the issues you can't necessarily see with your naked eye or even hear, but they fundamentally disrupt how the vehicle operates. I mean, they're electronic, they're code-based, and they drive people absolutely crazy.
Oh, without a doubt. The electronic stuff is where people usually panic first.
Right. So let me look at a highly specific, notoriously common one from the sources, the P0171 code.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The classic P0171.
Which indicates a low fuel trim issue.
Yeah.
And when this code pops up, the driver usually experiences really low power and severe hesitation when trying to accelerate.
Right, stepping on the gas and nothing happens.
Exactly. To make this visual, I kind of picture a runner trying to sprint a 100-meter dash, but they're being forced to breathe through a tiny plastic cocktail straw. The engine is hesitating because it's literally being starved of the resources it needs to, create a proper combustion explosion.
That cocktail straw analogy perfectly captures the symptom.
Yeah.
But to understand how to fix it, we have to look at the mechanics of why the engine is suddenly breathing through a straw.
Right. Why is it starving?
Well, the engine's computer is constantly trying to maintain a flawless ratio of air to fuel. And fuel trim is just the industry term for the computer adding or subtracting microscopic amounts of fuel to keep that balance perfect.
Okay, so fuel trim is just the computer tweaking the recipe.
Exactly. So a low fuel trim code means the system is registering way too much air and not enough fuel. It is running lean. The computer is basically throwing its hands up, saying, I can't safely add enough fuel to compensate for all this extra oxygen.
Wait, before we move on. How does extra oxygen just magically appear inside a sealed engine?
Usually through something called a vacuum leak.
A vacuum leak, okay.
Yeah, so the engine measures the air coming in through the main intake tube using a sensor, right? But imagine there's a cracked rubber hose somewhere further down the line past that sensor.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the engine's natural suction pulls unmetered ambient air through that crack. The main sensor never saw that air enter, so the computer doesn't know it needs to inject more fuel to match it.
Ah, so it's blind to that extra air.
Precisely. But another sensor, down in the exhaust pipe, detects all this leftover unburned oxygen leaving the engine, realizes the mixture is dangerously lean, and boom, triggers the P0171 code to protect the engine from burning itself up.
Wow. I always assumed that when a car loses power on the highway and starts hesitating like that, the engine is experiencing some sort of, catastrophic internal failure.
Right. People think the whole engine is dying.
Yeah. My instinct is that pistons are breaking or the transmission is falling apart. But you're telling me this terrifying loss of power is often just a cracked piece of cheap rubber tubing confusing a computer.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, You are hitting on the exact paradigm shift that needs to happen when we think about modern cars.
How so?
Because today's vehicles are highly sensitive, deeply interconnected rolling computer networks. A cracked $10 vacuum hose completely destabilizes the math the computer relies on.
Which means we should view these invisible gremlins as simple miscommunications rather than immediate death sentences for the car.
Yep.
Because there's another fascinating example of this miscommunication in the diagnostic data. The interior dome light.
Oh, that's a great example.
People will park their car, shut the door, and the interior roof light just stays on. And they panic. They think their electrical system is possessed or their battery is fundamentally flawed.
And they're worried they'll wake up to a dead car the next morning.
Exactly. But the reality is usually just a tiny plastic switch inside the door latch assembly that got stuck.
Yep. The car's computer literally believes the physical door is still wide open because that switch is stuck in the open position.
So it's doing its job.
The vehicle is doing exactly what it was programmed to do.
Yeah.
Keep the lights on so you can see while the door is open. It is a perfect example of why it's crucial to trace a massive annoying symptom back to a very precise, often microscopic point of failure.
So the takeaway for you, the listener, is to take a breath. Bad data usually causes the invisible gremlins, not a dying vehicle.
Well said.
But okay, we've talked about what happens when the computer gets confused. What happens when the computer is fine, but the physical hardware directing your comfort breaks down?
Moving from invisible electronics to the climate control.
Yes, because diagnosing a rogue heater requires a completely different type of deductive reasoning.
It really does. This is where we shift from reading digital codes to observing physical behavior using the instruments already sitting in front of you on the dashboard.
Just picture this scenario. It's freezing outside. You get in your car, you crank the temperature dial all the way up to maximum heat, and the vents just blast you with ice-cold air.
The absolute worst.
It really is. Now, the diagnostic data breaks this down into two main categories of failure. It's either a routing issue inside the dashboard, or it's a fundamental heat generation issue under the hood.
Right. Making the heat versus moving the heat.
Exactly. So to understand the first category, the routing issue, we need to talk about the blend door.
Okay.
And I like to picture the blend door as like a tiny railway switch track hidden deep inside your dashboard.
That's a good visual.
Yeah, and the air blowing from the fan is the train. If the switch track is flipped one way, the air train travels through the AC evaporator and comes out freezing cold.
Right.
But if the track is flipped the other way, the air train travels through the heater core and comes out piping hot.
That is exactly how the architecture works. And a failure here means the mechanism controlling that switch track is broken.
So like a sleepy traffic cop just pointing the wrong way?
Basically.
Yeah.
Maybe the physical dial you turned snapped a cable, or the tiny electric actuator motor that physically moves that plastic blend door has just burned out. The heat exists, it's just being routed down the wrong track and never reaches the cabin vents.
But how do we know if the switch track is broken or if there is simply no hot air being generated at all? Because there's this incredibly simple, like 5 to 10 minute diagnostic test you can do right in your driveway to figure this out.
Yes, the temp gauge test.
You just let the car idle for 10 minutes and then look at the engine temperature gauge on your dashboard. Now, tell me if my logic is flawed here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I sit in my freezing car for 10 minutes and I look down and that needle on the temp gauge is still resting dead at the bottom in the cold zone, I am no longer dealing with a broken switch track inside the dashboard, right?
Right.
That sounds like a massive engine issue.
What's fascinating here is that you have just executed a flawless diagnostic tree.
Oh, nice.
The brilliance of this simple test is its binary nature. By doing nothing more than sitting in the driver's seat and observing a basic gauge, you instantly divide a complex automotive system right down the middle.
You don't even have to open the hood or pick up a wrench to rule out half the car?
Precisely. To understand why this works, we have to look at how a car actually generates cabin heat. Because it doesn't use electric coils like a space heater you'd plug into a wall.
Oh, right. It uses the engine.
It uses the engine's hot coolant. As the engine runs, it generates massive friction and heat. Liquid coolant flows through the engine block, absorbs that intense heat, and a water pump pushes that boiling liquid into a miniature radiator hidden inside your dashboard.
The heater core.
Exactly, the heater core. And the cabin fan simply blows air over that hot radiator to warm you up.
So if the engine temperature gauge on the dash is still reading cold after 10 minutes of running, the engine itself isn't warming up the liquid coolant.
Which completely rules out the dashboard electronics. You know the blend door is fine, you know the dials are fine. You have isolated the problem to a fundamental cooling system issue under the hood.
Like what, exactly?
Well, perhaps the engine doesn't have enough coolant to circulate because of a leak? Or maybe the thermostat is stuck open, preventing the engine from ever reaching its proper operating temperature.
That makes so much sense.
It turns a frustrating, freezing morning into a structured, logical investigation.
And here's where it gets really interesting. We've decoded the invisible check engine lights, and we've used the dashboard gauges to diagnose the climate control. But the most aggressive way a car talks to us is outside the cabin.
Through pure physics.
Through pure physics, through vibration, movement, and sound. I mean, driving a car should be a smooth experience, but when suspension and braking components start to fail, it's like you're suddenly conducting a terrible orchestra, and every dying part is playing a different, incredibly annoying instrument.
That is a great way to put it. Each distinct sound in that terrible orchestra points to a highly specific mechanical reality, provided you know how to listen to the vocabulary of the vehicle.
So let's translate some of these instruments. Say you're driving down the highway and you hear this deep, droning, howling noise.
Oh, the howl.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you're driving over rumble strips, and the pitch gets higher the faster you drive. The sources say that's not road noise. That is a feeling wheel bearing crying out for help.
Yes, it is.
But why does a wheel bearing howl instead of, say, clunking or squeaking?
Well, a wheel bearing is essentially a tightly packed ring of heavy-duty steel balls constantly rolling in thick grease. This allows your wheel to spin smoothly while supporting the entire weight of the car.
Okay, steel balls in grease. Got it.
But over 100,000 miles, that grease can break down or leak out. And when the lubrication vanishes, you are left with dry steel grinding against dry steel at very high speeds.
Oh, wow. That sounds awful.
It is. The metal actually begins to score and pit. That howling sound is the acoustic resonance of microscopic metal gouges grinding against each other thousands of times a minute. It is purely a rotational friction issue.
Okay, that paints a very clear, slightly terrifying picture. Now, contrast that howl with a harsh clunking or banging sound when you drive over a pothole or a speed bump.
A clunk points to a tolerance issue in the front suspension, specifically parts like ball joints, tie rods, or control arms.
Tolerance issue? What does that mean physically?
Think of a ball joint like the shoulder joint in the human body. It's a metal ball resting snugly inside a lubricated metal socket. It allows the suspension to pivot up and down and steer left and right simultaneously.
Like a ball and socket joint.
Exactly. But over years of taking impacts, the metal wears down, and a physical gap forms between the ball and the socket. So when you hit a bump, that loose metal ball violently slams against the roof of the socket.
And that slam is the clunk.
That impact is the clunk you hear. A joint that used to be infinitely tight now has dangerous wiggle room.
What about the brakes? Because this one drives people crazy. You just paid a shop to put brand new brake pads on your car. You drive away, and every time you stop at a red light, they let out this ear-piercing squeal.
So annoying.
Right. I would assume the mechanic, installed them backward or forgot a bolt.
That is a very common assumption. But if we look closer at the physics of braking, it is usually just a material mismatch.
Really? A material mismatch?
Yeah. Brake pads press against a spinning metal disc called a rotor to stop the car. And many modern brake pads are made of ceramic, which is incredibly hard and handles heat exceptionally well.
Okay, ceramic pads.
However, if you pair an ultra-hard ceramic pad with a softer, standard cast iron rotor, the pad doesn't bite into the metal properly. Instead, it glazes the surface, kind of skips across it at a microscopic level.
It skips?
Yes, and that skipping creates a high-frequency vibration, which our ears interpret as a high-pitched squeal. You essentially turned your brake rotor into a giant tuning fork.
That is fascinating. The noise isn't necessarily a broken part, it's just two materials rejecting each other.
Exactly right.
But there's a physical sensation mentioned in the diagnostic data that really caught my eye. It's the bouncing ride.
Oh, the bouncing ride.
You hit a dip in the road, and the car just keeps floating up and down like a boat on rolling ocean waves, and this points straight to bad shocks and struts. Now, I always assumed that inspecting suspension components meant taking the car to a professional, hoisting it up on a massive hydraulic lift, and using specialized tools.
A lot of people think that.
Yeah. So how can I possibly diagnose a bad strut in my own driveway with zero tools?
This raises an important question about what we can actively observe just by knowing where to look. A strut is really just two components married together. There's a heavy-duty coiled spring that supports the weight of the car, and it's wrapped around a shock absorber.
And the shock absorber is what? Just a cylinder?
Right, it's a metal cylinder filled with thick hydraulic oil and pressurized gas. So to diagnose a bouncing car, simply kneel down by the wheel well with a flashlight. First, inspect the thick metal coil spring near its base.
What am I looking for?
You are looking for actual, physical cracks in the metal. Because a worn-out shock absorber forces the spring to take violent impacts it was never designed to handle alone.
Okay, cracks in the spring. But what is the ultimate smoking gun for a dead strut?
The undeniable proof is fluid leakage.
Fluid leakage.
Yes. If you look at the smooth, cylindrical body of the shock absorber and you see dark oil visibly dripping down the side of it, or a greasy puddle accumulating on the ground near the inside of your tire, the diagnosis is confirmed.
It's just bleeding oil.
Exactly. The internal seal has blown, the hydraulic fluid that dampens the bouncing has escaped, and the strut is completely dead.
Wait, before we move on, I need to ask about the consequences of ignoring this. I know a bouncing car is annoying, but is it actually dangerous? The Diagnostic Masterclass mentioned something about it causing a cupping wear pattern on the tires.
Yes, cupping.
What exactly does cupping look like, and why does a leaky strut destroy a tire?
Imagine taking an ice cream scoop and carving out shallow, repetitive divots all along the outer edge of your tire's rubber tread.
Oh, wow.
That scallop pattern is cupping. When a strut loses its hydraulic fluid, it can no longer keep the tire firmly planted on the pavement. So at highway speeds, the heavy tire is literally bouncing off the asphalt like a basketball, hundreds of times a mile.
Just dribbling down the highway?
Exactly. And every time it crashes back down onto the road, it scrubs off a patch of rubber. Ignoring a leaking strut creates a catastrophic domino effect.
So you're just ruining the tire.
The uncontrolled bouncing ruins expensive tires, yes. But it also sends violent shock waves through the rest of the suspension, tearing apart those ball joints and tie rods we talked about earlier. One neglected part will actively murder the healthy parts surrounding it.
Note to self, look for the oil drip, save hundreds of dollars on ruined tires.
Definitely.
There is one more physical sensation we need to cover, and it blew my mind because it feels like a bizarre magic trick of physics.
Let's hear it.
It involves the rear brakes. Imagine you put your vehicle in drive, step on the gas, and the rear wheel completely locks up. It just drags against the pavement and refuses to turn.
Okay.
But if you shift the transmission into reverse, the wheel rolls backward perfectly fine. It feels like a transmission failure, but the data says this highly specific directional lockup points to loose brake shoes inside a rear drum brake.
That's right.
How does the direction of the tire change whether the brake is locked or unlocked?
It is a brilliant quirk born entirely out of directional physics. Many vehicles still use drum brakes on the rear wheels, and inside a spinning metal drum, there are two curved brake shoes.
Okay, two curved shoes.
When you press the brake pedal, hydraulic pressure pushes those curved shoes outward, rubbing against the inside wall of the spinning drum to stop the vehicle.
I can picture that. It's like pushing your hands outward against the inside of a spinning bowl to slow it down.
Perfect analogy.
Okay.
Now imagine the metal hardware holding those curved shoes in place breaks or rusts away. The shoe is now loose inside the drum.
Oh, so it's just rattling around in there.
Right. When you shift into drive and move forward, the forward rotation of the drum grabs the leading edge of that loose shoe and aggressively drags it along, wedging it tighter and tighter into the curve of the drum.
Ah, it's wedging itself.
It binds up completely. Engineers call this self-energizing force. But when you shift into reverse, the drum spins in the opposite direction. That reverse rotation naturally unwedges the shoe, pushing it away from the binding point and allowing the wheel to spin freely.
So the very direction the wheel is spinning is what weaponizes the broken part against you.
Exactly.
By simply noticing that the car rolls backward but refuses to roll forward, you have basically x-rayed a sealed metal drum and diagnosed the exact broken spring inside, all without ever taking the wheel off the car.
You are translating a bizarre symptom into a precise mechanical reality. It proves that the vehicle isn't acting randomly despite you. It is strictly obeying the laws of physics based on its current compromised condition.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Today, we dug into a completely new toolkit designed to change how you interact with your vehicle.
A very practical toolkit.
Yeah. We learned that a terrifying loss of engine power might just be a cracked vacuum hose confusing a computer. We learned that you can use the engine temperature gauge to divide climate control issues in half and completely rule out the dashboard electronics.
Just by sitting there for 10 minutes.
Right. We learned that getting down on one knee in your driveway and spotting a simple oil drip on a strut can save you from buying 4 brand new cupped tires. And we learned how to use our ears to differentiate a howling dry wheel bearing from a clanking worn out ball joint.
It represents a fundamental shift from being a passive passenger in your own vehicle to becoming an active, informed observer.
And this respects your time and your wallet. You don't have to be a master mechanic with a garage full of pneumatic tools to be an empowered driver. When you know what these invisible codes, temperature tells, and suspension symphonies actually mean, you just refuse to be overwhelmed.
You have the vocabulary now.
You can walk into a repair shop and say, I have a howling noise that gets louder as I speed up. I am pretty sure we need to look at the front right wheel bearing instead of just sliding your credit card across the counter and saying, my car is making a scary noise, please fix it.
It shifts the power dynamic entirely in your favor.
Right.
Which actually leads me to a broader thought to leave you with.
Oh, go for it.
We have spent this entire deep dive decoding the subtle, specific warnings our vehicles give us before they fail. If our cars are constantly trying to communicate their internal health to us through a slight drop in temperature, or a subtle howl on the highway, or a localized fluid leak,
Yeah.
what other complex systems in our daily lives, our homes, our bodies, our relationships, are constantly flashing their own warning codes that we just haven't bothered to learn how to translate yet?
Oh, that is a fantastic question to chew on. Everything has a check engine light if you know where to look.
Yeah.
And suddenly getting that glowing warning on your dashboard isn't a terrifying mystery anymore. It's just the start of a really good conversation. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.